Hello folks and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at Gilmore Girls Season 1, Episode 4, The Deer Hunters. And if you're new to these videos, then hi, my name is Scott, and you know how Gilmore Girls is just packed to the rafters with pop culture references, and well, if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of the times they can just go straight over our heads. So the goal of these videos is to give a little bit of a background to each of the pop culture references so that next time you watch that episode on your personal watch through, you'll have the context and you'll enjoy the joke even more. And once we're done with the pop culture references, then I'll give a little bit of select trivia and at the end give my review on the episode. And whilst you're watching, don't forget that the comment section is open down below, so if there are any pop culture references that you did know, feel free to comment that, but if there are any that you didn't know, feel free to put that in there and be like, oh my gosh, the veil is lifted, now I understand. Thank you for the context. And if you enjoy it, make sure to give it a like and also a little subscribe as well so you don't miss out on any other future episodes for Gilmore Girls or any other shows as well. And just on a personal note, you may have seen in my last video, the Friends Season 1 Episode 3, that I'm not actually very well at the moment. I was at the beginning of a cold when I recorded that one, and now I'm at the end of the cold whilst recording this one. But I was dedicated to keep to the schedule, so I'm going to push through. And oh gosh, I just really hope this isn't one of those Gilmore Girls episodes where it is just so many references, because I'm already exhausted enough as it is, and those girls are going to be the death of me. No, but the sooner we start, the sooner I'll be able to have a rest. So let's jump on in. We're in a class at Chilton, and Rory has just received her test paper back, and unfortunately, she hasn't done very well. But Mr. Medina tries to defer her disappointment by saying this.
Look at the large red circles around various parts of your paper as friendly reminders that to err is human, and that here at Chilton we try to beat that humanity right out of you.
To give some classical context here, "To err is human" is a quote from the 1711 poem An Essay on Criticism by English writer Alexander Pope. The poem, which was written in heroic couplets, i.e. pairs of rhyming lines with 10 syllables in each, more commonly referred to as iambic pentameter, ruminates on advice and, as referenced in the title, criticism. One of Pope's arguments being that bad criticism can actually do more harm than bad content. And towards the end of part 2 of the essay pops up the line, "To err is human, to forgive divine." To err, i.e. to make errors, is just human. It's part of our nature. We are going to make mistakes. And to forgive is divine. It is reserved for the deities. And so if you are able to show forgiveness and to actually practice forgiveness, then you are likened to a god. And so the line "to err is human," which Max quotes, has become woven into the fabric of our culture because it is a great grounding and reminder that, hey, we can't keep aiming for perfection. We are going to fail. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to err. It is just part of our nature. And I think sometimes we need to be reminded of that, because in this world where we can just compare ourselves to everyone and anything, we've got the entire world in the palm of our hand, and we've got all these comparisons of people on different paths further down the same path that we hope to be on, and we just look and go, wow, I have failed, therefore I am a failure. No. If you are a failure, if you have failed, if you have made a mistake, then you are a fantastic human being, because that is all we can hope to do. But I tell you who didn't fail, Alexander Pope, because that's not the only quote that comes out of this essay. No. He also came out with such bangers as "A little learning is a dangerous thing," and "Fools rush in where angels fear to tread." I mean, fair play, mate. To err is human, but you ain't human because you did not make any errors on that. Smashed it. Now we're out of Chilton and in the Independence Inn, and as we're repositioning a harp, this happens.
Oh, you imbecile!
Back off, Chevalier.
Before we go into the explanation, can we just take a moment to admire how real that looked? Because it definitely looked like there was no acting involved there. It looked like that harp definitely hurt Michelle. So fair play to both of yous. Anywho, Maurice Chevalier was a French singer, actor, and entertainer who worked from the early 1900s all the way through to the 70s. He started out working in musical comedies in Paris, and then he did a short stint in London, and after World War I, he went over to the States, where he met Gershwin and Irving Berlin, and they all worked together to bring the operetta Dede to Broadway in 1922, and this is what put him on the map. And in this transitional period between silent silent movies and the talkies, he worked with a slew of Hollywood stars. Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and he was even nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor for his roles in The Love Parade and The Big Pond. At one point, he was the highest paid actor in Hollywood, and you may recognize him from arguably his most famous role, that being in Gigi, the success of which earned him an honorary award from the Academy. But you may also know his voice from his final piece of work, that being the opening song from Disney's The Aristocats. And so if you know that song or any of his other pieces of work, you will know that he has a thick French accent, and that is what Drella is referring to in this scene. Michel is being French, Michel is being dramatic. French and dramatic? Chevalier. At least it's a step up from Pepe Le Pew. The fracas between Drella and Michel continues.
Hold on.
She scratched my shoes.
What a baby.
These are $300 Italian loafers.
Wonder if Versace makes a pacifier.
Quite simply, Versace was set up in 1978 by Gianni Versace, and it is an Italian luxury fashion brand. And in those decades, since its birth, it has made billions upon billions in revenue from selling high-end designer dresses, trousers, handbags, and even ashtrays. And Michel has brought up the fact that his loafers cost $300, which prompts Drella to go, okay, Mr. Big Bucks, let's see if some high-end luxury fashion brand, i.e. Versace, also makes pacifiers. So you can spend your money on getting one of them because you need one, because you're acting like a baby. And of course, I did just have to check if Versace actually makes a pacifier. They don't. But they do have a newborn accessories page. They make soft hats, baby bibs, and footwear. So here's some baby caps, £90 each. Here are some socks, £55 for a pair. And here's a baby nest, £325. So yeah, it seems having a kid can be even more expensive, if you want it to be. Phew. Anywho, the arguments have subsided, we're now in the kitchen, and Rory enters.
Oh! Behold, in theaters now, the thing that reads a lot.
Lorelei's joke is playing on the title structure of B-movie horrors from the 1950s that would follow this naming convention of the thing that whatever. So like the thing from another world, the thing that couldn't die. And by describing whatever this nefarious entity would be as the thing, it would prompt you to have to go to watch the movie in order to figure out what they're actually talking about. But at least you've got some context because, oh, from another world, it must be from space. The thing that wouldn't die, oh, it must be immortal. And right here, the thing that reads a lot is, well, don't know what's happening, but you're carrying a lot of books. It looks like you got a lot to read. Would you watch that movie at the pictures? It'd probably still be better than the majority of things that are coming out nowadays. Lorelei is reading a published review of Suki's cooking.
The entrees are as heavenly as the starters, though the much-lauded risotto was perfectly fine. It was the simple handkerchief pasta with brown sage and a butter sauce that sent me through the roof.
Now, I love pasta in all shapes and sauces, but I've never heard of handkerchief pasta, and I've just looked it up, and its proper Italian name is fazzoletti. My apologies for any Italians that are hearing that going, oh, he butchered that pronunciation. But yes, basically, for all intents and purposes, as far as I can see, it's kind of just having a lasagna sheet. And I'd always wondered that because I've made lasagnas and I've had lasagna plenty of times in my life. I've been a Garfield for most of my adult life. And I've always thought, could you just cook the lasagna sheets? Why you got to put it layered? Yeah, that's what handkerchief pasta is. It's basically lasagna sheets cooked with the sauce. So I don't think there's much else for me to say on that. Let's move on, shall we? Lorelei wants to celebrate this fantastic review. Her energy levels are up here, but Suki's and Rory's are down here.
Where's to hell with it all? Where's throwing caution to the wind? Where's, oh shoot, the linen delivery.
You go, girl.
So this phrase is an expression of encouragement and empowerment, but unfortunately it's been rinsed over the years and kind of only used ironically nowadays, much like here when Rory says it. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because the origin of it is actually quite interesting. A lot of people may think that the phrase originated on the early 90s sitcom Martin, starring Martin Lawrence and Tisha Campbell. But this interview from The View in 2023 shines a new light on it.
Whoopi Goldberg was the very first person to ever say the euphemism, "You go, girl." It came from her. She was doing this MOW, right? And she was ad-libbing, and I could tell she was ad-libbing. She was trying to say, "Get it, girl," but she said, "You go, girl." I thought it was the funniest thing, so I started saying it a lot, and then Martin took it, and then it became what it is. So she's the OG.
And so, yeah, Whoopi Goldberg's ad-libbing flub gave birth to a rallying cry of empowerment and encouragement that unfortunately has lost its shine over the years because of overuse. But at least Rory got to use it here, though drenched in apathy. It's the next day, and Rory has entered the Warren, which is the antique shop, looking for Lane.
Marco. Polo. Hey, Marco. Hey, Polo.
So on one hand, and in this instance, Marco Polo is a game played in a swimming pool, a contained space. One person has their eyes closed and they shout out Marco. Then everybody else who's playing shouts out Polo. Then the person who has their eyes closed has to find the other people based on sound localization. So they just hear where they think the word polo came from, and then they head towards them. Obviously, you can try to get away, but if you start splashing, they're going to be able to hear exactly where you are. So it's about moving stealthily, and every time you have to respond with polo, even if you're right next to them. It's like, oh, I've given myself away right now. On the other hand, Marco Polo was a 13th century Italian explorer. There doesn't seem to be any connection between them. No one quite knows why this game, which is very popular and being played right now, is named after that particular person. There's some tenuous quip about, oh, Marco Polo didn't know where he was going, and so you don't quite know where you're going because you're blindfolded in the... But it doesn't make sense. But I would say, though completely unrelated, the existence of this game has done a really good job of preserving Marco Polo's history and legacy, because the question will arise, why are we saying Marco Polo? Who was Marco Polo? Let's look it up, and keeps it fresh in the public's mind. I wonder how I could implement my name. So in many years' time, people go, Scott Westwood, be like, who was that guy? But the thing is, when you Google me, not that much actually appears. There's one page which I absolutely creased at. It's one of these like celebrity profiles that was just made because I've got a TikTok following, completely pulled from whatever I said, probably from AI. One, it got my birthday wrong, and two, it says something like he lives in Australia. I don't. I just was on vacation there. And he often makes jokes about being single. I was like, oh, okay. I don't, but it's nice to know that my coping mechanism of humor and my inability to get a woman to date me really blends well. And that's going to be my legacy. So maybe don't quote my name for future games. Let's carry on. Rory and Lane have managed to find each other, and Lane is eating a rice cake.
What is that? 12 calories. Here. Oh my God, bless you.
That right there is a Snickers bar. It is nugget or nougat, depending on where you're from. Caramel, peanuts, milk chocolate. It's delicious. I might go and get one after I finish filming this video. They used to be called marathons. Now they're not. So that's a Snickers. And we'll add that to the reference list. Let's carry on. Back in the inn, Drella is harping away and Lorelei comes over.
No Black Sabbath.
No one is listening.
No Black Sabbath, no Steely Dan, no Boston, and no Queen.
What happened to make you so cold?
We like that Mozart.
I am the Ernie Shaw of harpists.
Oh, goodness, they really layered it on in like 10 seconds, didn't they? Alrighty, let's get to this. Black Sabbath are a British heavy metal band from Birmingham, which is where I'm from. In fact, I live near the Black Sabbath Bridge, so how about that? Can't escape them, eh? And the song being played on the harp by Drella was Iron Man, which is considered to be one of the best heavy metal songs of all time, which was from their second album, Paranoid, which is considered to be one of the best heavy metal albums of all time. And there's plenty more I could say about them, but we've got to carry on. Steely Dan, an American rock band set up in the 70s, their sound is quite an amalgamation of different genres. You've got a bit of jazz thrown in there, a bit of R&B, a bit of Latin, and their lyrics are quite cryptic. They're somewhat Marmite. If you listen to them, you may be like, oh, okay, these are good, but if you like them, you really like them, and they've got quite a cult following. And over the years, they've broken up and they've reformed and they've swapped out different members into the lineup, and they're still continuing in some form or another to this present day. Boston are another American rock band set up in the 70s, and they were formed in Boston, hence their name. They were rather prolific through the first decade of their career, but they slowed down quite a bit in the 80s and 90s, but now they are still going, even though the lead singer unfortunately passed away in 2007. And it's a shame they've been vetoed, because I think More Than a Feeling played on the harp would sound fantastic. Queen are yet another band set up in the 70s, but much like Black Sabbath, they were established right here in Blighty, and they are considered one of the most influential and one of the best bands ever. And I would say in the most part because of the incredible vocal talent and just, energetic persona of the lead man, Freddie Mercury. And yes, I suppose Bohemian Rhapsody on a harp may cause a few heads to turn, but could you imagine Seven Seas of Rye on a harp? I mean, just that piano intro is incredible, but imagine that on a harp. Oh, yes, please. Can someone do that? I would like to listen to that. So there are a list of musical acts that shouldn't be played, but one that should be played is anything by Mozart. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was an 18th century composer from Salzburg, and in his only 35 years on Earth, he wrote over 800 pieces of work and is considered the greatest composer in the history of Western music. And well, it makes sense for him to be recommended since he wrote a concerto for the flute and harp. So you've got half of it all right, just got to get a flautist. Wonder if anybody in the inn carries a spare flute with them. But since I mentioned flutes, let's take a look at another in the woodwind family, perhaps clarinets. Oh, and that brings us perfectly to the final reference made in this little section, that one about Artie Shaw. Because Artie Shaw is considered one of the greatest clarinetists of all time. Now, there are a couple of things about Artie Shaw that, when you put side by side with Drella, makes her saying I'm the Artie Shaw of harpists a rather apt comparison. For you see, one, Artie Shaw was considered the top of his game for his chosen instrument, and Drella considers herself to be the top of the game for her chosen instrument. But two, Artie Shaw was notoriously difficult to work with, and Drella is notoriously difficult to work with. In only the 4 episodes she's appeared in, she's been in scraps and arguments with members of staff and the public alike. But 3, Artie Shaw was a perfectionist, and maybe Drella also considers herself a perfectionist as well. But his perfectionism manifested in rather an odd way. He was notorious for starting up bands and bringing them to such great success that they were loved within the wider community, and then disbanding them, just walking away from them. He would bring up a group of people playing music together to such public acclaim and then just walk away, to then start again from scratch somewhere else. And keeping that in mind, when you consider that this is the very last time that we ever see Drella, it kind of makes the comparison a little bit more. Because one could argue that Drella considers herself to have reached the peak of where she can go, and then she walks away from it. She has reached the pinnacle of her playing in the Independence Inn, and now she walks away, never to be seen again. Much like Artie Shaw reaching the lofty heights of his success to then walk away to start somewhere else. So that 10-second clip contains so many references, and that one reference contains so many allusions. I'm going to need a break for a bit, I think. And much like I need a pick-me-up, so does Lorelei.
Suki, honey, coffee to go.
It's fresh over there.
Ooh, good. Fresh in my first lifetime as Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc, who is now the patron saint of France, was a military leader in the 1400s who gained recognition from her victories and defense of her country in the 100 Years' War. Her victories in her military campaigns paved the way to the eventual coronation of King Charles VII of France and a renewal of morale in the French people who were losing the war at the time. She broke gender roles and norms of the time as she would wear men's clothing and gained great success success in a field where women weren't even allowed to be included. And all of this was done, as Joan claimed, via divine guidance. She said that she was acting on the word of God to be the savior of France. Eventually, she was tried for heresy and burned at the stake. Oh, and did I fail to mention that all of this happened in just 19 years? Yeah, she was only a teenager when she was executed, and yet in just her short, less than 2-decade lifetime, she made such an impact on the Western world, such an impact on history, that even to this day, she is referenced and brought up in conversation and is considered the savior of France. But less about the independence of France and more about the independence in Lorelei has taken this coffee and gone, it's not fresh. It was made when I was living my previous life of Joan of Arc, i.e. 600 years ago, i.e. the coffee is old. And of course, of all the lives that Lorelei could have lived before, one of them had to be one of the greatest feminine icons of history. But if that was the case, that Joan of Arc and Lorelei shared the same soul, you just know Joan would be giving it all that whilst tied up on the stake. Oh, she would not have gone down without a fight. Well, she didn't, but you know what I mean. In the essence. Let's just carry on, shall we? Now we're back at Chilton, and the parents are in to listen to some information about their kid's future.
Well, we want to give as complete an overview as possible.
Yes, but will he be included on the advanced placement test?
We can't know exactly what will be on the AP test, but it will definitely be important for future studies when your kids hit their universities.
So this one is very much locked behind where you happen to have grown up, because AP, advanced placement, is only available in America or Canada, and it's to do, as I understand, it's to do with your education system. So if you're in high school, you can get these advanced placement tests, which are basically college, or as we call it over here, university level type of education, and you would take on that extra curriculum and learn much further details, greater information than you would at your high school level and your high school syllabi, and then you would get tested, and if you passed those tests, you could possibly get college credit, you could get course credit, you could get advanced placements, and potentially be put into courses when you graduate in college. I find that unbelievable, to be honest. I'm not going to go into a whole thing now. I can tell you I am so freaking glad that I'm not in school anymore. Now that I'm 34 years old, I look back at education, and I was quite a gifted kid. When I was younger, I did my maths GCSE when I was 10 years old. So the GCSEs is what you sit when you're 16. So that equivalent when I was 10. I was very clever as a kid. And then I realized academia wasn't for me. I didn't want to be part of that because the pressure and the stress that young people are put under just to get some scores on a piece of paper, it's disgusting. And I have seen so many young minds get warped, get terrorized, get damaged by the stresses of the education system because, oh, if you don't get this perfect score, that's it, your life's over. And the amount of people I've known who feel that their lives are over and in fact have made sure that their lives are over because the grade they received wasn't what they hoped for or anything like that. I think the modern education system has been built in such a way that it puts undue stress and pressure on young minds who should be out there exploring and learning about the world in different ways, because you shouldn't judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree. And so getting people to just regurgitate facts and figures and then saying that their entire life is based on the trajectory of how well they can just regurgitate whatever they've just learned within a 1 hour sitting period. No. I said I want to go into it, but I'm not going to go into it much further. I can just say I am glad that I'm no longer in education, and I'm also very glad that I didn't receive an education in America, because I would not have wanted to have done AP classes. I would not have been wanted to have been, oh, why is my mate doing AP chemistry? Maybe I should be going for AP that... No. Okay, let's just move on. And just to tack on to the end of this one, whilst my ire is still up about the education system, there is another reference that's made in a little bit. I won't show the quote, but they mention the SATs. And the SATs, the Scholastic Aptitude Tests, as they're known in America, we also have them over in England as well, which are just standard assessment tests. That's basically just another standard test that everybody sits in order to see where they'll be placed. It's just another way to make young minds fraught, is what it is, because we'd have our SATs, or our SATs as we call them, we'd have our SATs. I remember a year 6 SATs, year 3. So year 3 SATs when you are 7 or 8 years old, your year 6 SATs when you are 10, 11 years old, and then you're moving into GCSEs and A-levels and all of that. But yeah, yet another way to put a mark against a name for you to look at and either be overjoyed at or to be utterly miserable at, when at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Nearly 20 years since I sat my GCSEs, and I can't even remember which ones I sat, let alone the grades. But what I do remember is the stress that was put on me and my peers for having to get them right, because these will change the trajectory of your life. Your entire life hinges on this. Nope, they are just numbers or letters attributed to random arbitrary things. Jumping through hoops that somebody else has set is not a good qualifier on how you are as a human being. So just remember that. If you did well in your exams or you didn't do well in your exams, it doesn't matter. It just matters how you live your life and whether you're a decent human being or not. That is me done talking about education. Let's go back to me giving some education about pop culture references. I see the irony, I'm moving on. Lorelei's done most of the talking, but now it's Max's turn to ask a question.
So, are you a B-52s girl?
What?
The B-52s are an American new wave band who evoke a thrift shop aesthetic because they have pulled sources from all different places, whether it's from the 50s, the 60s, rock and roll, or even trash culture. And you really get the sense of that in their music, because when you listen to it, you can see that there isn't really a definitive through line of style. There's somewhat a kind of randomness to it. I mean, when you look at some of the songs they've done, they did a cover of Meet the Flintstones, i.e. the theme song from the Flintstones. Okay, sure. But their first hit was Rock Lobster. Yeah, you know that one? Family Guy did it. Rock Lobster. It's a song about a rock lobster. Yep. But their most famous song will always be Love Shack. And whether you love it or hate it, it is definitely a tune. It is definitely a bop, because oh my goodness, does that get played. And you can just pick it up from anywhere, that sort of call and response type of thing for it. The Love Shack, or the the bass. There's just so many layers to it that you listen to and you go, I can't quite put my finger on whether this is genius or whether it is pure chaos. And that's kind of what makes them the perfect vibe for Lorelei, because on her way to Chilton, she's drinking coffee, she spills it on herself, she has to change into a spare shirt that she has in the back, and what is the shirt? The B-52s. This band of randomness and chaos, whether it is just borderline genius or completely frenetic, and that is exactly kind of a great description for Lorelei Gilmore. So it is apt she is wearing it, and it is apt that it is brought up now. We're back in Stars Hollow in Luke's diner, and Lorelei has sat down with Rory and says, hey, why didn't you tell me about your grade?
You couldn't tell me? You tell me everything.
It was too humiliating.
Oh, honey, you once told me that you loved Saved by the Bell. What could be more humiliating than that?
Saved by the Bell was a teen sitcom from the early 90s, and it followed the stories of a group of high schoolers from Bayside High School in Los Angeles. And throughout its original 4 seasons and the subsequent spin-offs over the years, it was full of humor and hijinks, but it also touched on more serious issues, which would have been eye-opening and enlightening to the demographic that were watching at the time. Issues such as dishousing, drug abuse, and death and grief. And as such, it was wildly popular at the time amongst younger people because they were seeing representations of themselves on TV and possibly getting the answers to questions that they were too afraid to ask. And according to Lorelei, Rory loved this show because, of course, she loved a show about school. It tracks, doesn't it? Suki is stressing about this review that she got, and she wants to try to identify what the critic looked like.
Well, what did he look like?
Like he's unhappy with the risotto.
I serve a lot of people.
Or he had a beard, false teeth, or a wig, or those glasses with a big nose.
May I be fired now?
Absolutely.
These glasses with the nose are more commonly referred to as Groucho glasses because they are based on Groucho Marx, an American comedian and vaudevillian who was part of the troupe the Marx Brothers. The Marx Brothers started out in the early 1900s and were brought up in the ways of vaudeville. And of the 5 brothers that survived into adulthood, Chico, Harpo, and Groucho were the 3 that kind of made a stage presence. Those names aren't their names, they are stage names, and their characters are archetypes. So Chico was a fiery Italian, Harpo was a mute Irishman, and Groucho was originally a bumbling German professor, but after World War I, he changed that to be more Jewish. And when it comes to Groucho in particular, his individual look was wide, thick-brimmed glasses, a mustache, and a cigar. Now, anecdotally, one day he was late for a performance and he couldn't glue on his mustache, so he got grease paint and just painted it on his nose, and everybody loved it. And that became his look, this thick mustache and thick eyebrows with these glasses and, of course, the cigar. And this trio of characters, plus Zeppo and Gummo in certain movies, rose to popularity. In fact, Duck Soup, if you've ever watched it, oh my gosh, it genuinely is one of my favorite films. It is fantastic. I would highly recommend you go and watch that. Duck Soup, 1933, I think. And as they became ever popular, people wanted merchandise to do with them. Nowadays, it would be t-shirts and whatever, but back then, the way to get the merchandise for Groucho Marx was to sell his iconic look. And this came in the form of glasses. Attached to it would be eyebrows, a large nose, and a mustache underneath. And now this has become ubiquitous with any type of slapstick, any type of novelty gag. There's even an apple emoji with this similar look. But there is an issue with the Groucho glasses as a concept because they are considered offensive because they are tantamount to Jew face. The glasses, the large nose, they are stereotypes of Jewish immigrants in America, this sort of bookish look. They've received a lot of criticism in recent years, and as such, they aren't produced and distributed as much. But they have kind of solidified themselves in popular culture as basically slapstick, synonymous with slapstick, synonymous with farcical, synonymous with vaudevillian. And so you see them pop up in many different forms as just a quick fire shortcut way to go, hey, look, I'm in a ridiculous disguise, I'm doing something silly, look, I've got these on. And it is strange how we as humans make these connections because someone doing a joke of wearing these glasses makes us go, oh, look, the joke is that they are doing a joke based on a joke that someone from years ago did. Like, isn't it funny how things work out? I just find that fascinating because the actual glasses aren't funny, but we accept that they're funny because they are based on someone who is funny. So the joke kind of is, look, there's someone who is embodying and hearkening the energy and persona of someone who is funny, therefore this is funny. Does that make... Doesn't make sense, does it? I think I'm getting too tired. I think my mind's addling. We're already 20 references in, and I've still got half the episode to go. Oh, let's carry on. And this one isn't a reference, but I'm just bringing it up anyway.
I'm ready for this test. I know everything there is to know about Shakespeare.
Okay, you need to calm down now.
I know his birth date and his mother's name and the kind of ink he used.
No, she doesn't. No one does. Because Shakespeare's birthday is unknown. We know the day he was baptized, April 26th, and we know the day he died, April 23rd. And so we've kind of romantically just filled in the gaps and said that he died on the same day that he was born. So we claim that his birthday was April 23rd, but that is just made up. And also because April 23rd is St. George's Day, the patron saint of England. And so as a way to kind of put William Shakespeare, potentially one of the greatest exports out of England, on a pedestal, we go, yeah, nah, born on the same day as the patron saint of England. But no, we don't know his birthday. We don't even know if Shakespeare actually wrote his plays. But that is another discussion for another time, because I've got a degree that covered that rather well. And we went into some very big debates and very deep dives into that. But that is not for this video. That is not for now. We've still got plenty more to go. On with the show. Back at the inn, Drella has a question.
Hey, what do you think about Pat Benatar?
Great idea. Can she play the harp?
Pat Benatar is an American singer-songwriter. She is a multi-platinum album holder and she has won 4 Grammy Awards. She's awesome. Her style and sound is very much based in rock, and arguably her most successful song is Love is a Battlefield. Though, personally, that's not my favorite. I would say my favorite would either be We Belong, if you want something a little bit ballady, or Hit Me With Your Best Shot. A little bit more upbeat. I love that. It is such a bop. But it doesn't matter which song of hers I like. It's which song is the favorite of Drella, because, hey, she wants to do a harp rendition of it, but unfortunately it's been put on the veto list, so we'll never know. That is such a heartbreaker. That's also a Pat Benatar song as well. Just another one to throw in there for you, a little reference. Let's move on. Rory couldn't sit the test that she'd been studying for, and Lorelei has come to Chilton in order to defend her.
Do you have any idea what we have gone through this week? We have been up all night, every night, studying. We haven't slept. We haven't talked about anything else except this school and this test for 7 days. We have stretched ourselves as thin as humanly possible without going completely postal. My God, we're just one person.
So going postal means to become uncontrollably angry to the point of violence, and it stems from the US Postal Service, because through the 80s and 90s there were a slew of incidents where former or current post office workers attacked and murdered people within the workplace, either who worked there, formerly worked there, or just happened to be there. And no one quite understands as to why this is. Whether it's because of pay, whether it's because of the stress of the job, it's kind of a mystery. And there is this one little statistic that I want to share with you. In 1998, the United States Congress conducted a joint hearing to review the violence in the US Postal Service. In the hearing, it was noted that the Postal Service accounted for less than 1% of the full-time civilian labor force. So the Post Service is just 1% of the workforce, okay? But 13% of workplace homicides were committed at postal facilities by current or former employees. So though they make up just 1% of the workforce in the United States, nearly an eighth of workplace-related homicides are within this workforce. And so, yeah, these incidents garnered a lot of attention, very much came into the public eye, and spawned the phrase going postal, i.e. someone who seemed to be together, mild-mannered, wouldn't hurt a fly, suddenly just snapping and committing unspeakable acts of violence against their workplace. Of course, the Postal Service kind of wants to step away from that. They want to distance themselves away from that as much as possible, but unfortunately, it's stuck. And it is the continued use of that phrase in modern media, much like the clip we've just watched, that will solidify going postal as an unfortunate offspring of that workforce. I mean, I thought working for the Postal Service would be lovely. You know, you just get to go out and walk around neighborhoods and wear shorts. But no, there's a horrible phrase attributed to you. Ooh, goodness. And Lorelei is still hard at it with the defense.
I didn't call this place a rat hole.
Oh no, that's true. I added that. Wouldn't want you to get in trouble with Il Duce here.
Il Duce is the nickname of Benito Mussolini, former Prime Minister of Italy and one of Europe's first fascist dictators, ruling from 1925 to 1945. He took the name Il Duce as it was the Latin for duke, which is what he wanted to be known as when he became leader. It's kind of in the same way that Hitler adopted the title of Führer, just something to differentiate them from any other type of leader, an actual specific title to put them on the map and solidify their image. And so Lorelei decides to evoke the idea of fascist dictator Benito Mussolini in comparison to Headmaster Charleston because of his somewhat draconian rules concerning resitting examinations. I mean, look, I'm not a parent, I'm not a mother, but I would say it's probably just a little bit of a risky move to be comparing your daughter's headmaster to one of the most hated men in history, because that's that will definitely be something to be discussed in the next PTA meeting, methinks. After defending Rory to the hilt and comparing the headmaster to a vile dictator, Lorelai is now lamenting.
I thought this place was going to be so great. And now, I guess this goes on the boy was I wrong list, right above Gaucho's, but just below the flash dance phase.
My goodness, you do like to throw fits in your family.
So the first of these fashion mistakes are in no way related to the Gaucho that we spoke of earlier, because I think if Lorelai was saying, yeah, it was kind of a big fashion error for me to be walking around with brim glasses and a fake nose and a mustache, yeah, that is definitely a fashion mistake. But no, they just share the same name. Gauchos are a type of trouser that come from South America, where the cowboys would wear them, and that's where the name Gauchos come from, because gaucho means cowboy. They are basically long culottes. They are wide-leg trousers that stop around the mid-calf. And in the early 70s, they were quite a feminist statement. I mean, don't forget, it wasn't too many years ago that people were perplexed that women would wear trousers. I mean, how ridiculous is this world that there were conversations about whether women should wear trousers or not? I just sometimes can't believe the state of affairs of existence. That's another conversation for another time. But yeah, they are still around, people still wear them, but I suppose at the time, Lorelai tried them out and was like, no to that. And the Flashdance phase would be inspired by Flashdance, the 1983 movie. It was about a young working class girl who had aspirations to become a professional dancer, and so as such, she would wear dance-related attire, leotard, leg warmers, but an iconic oversized jumper that would hang off the shoulders. Or if it wasn't that iconic look, then it was the ripped trousers and the singlet also falling off the shoulder. Basically, the shoulders were oily because nothing could stick to them. Is that right? Have I used that analogy correct? I did it. I've been recording this video for a long time now. The lights are flickering, like it's telling me it's time to pack it in. But yes, either one of those looks, that is what Lorelai was trying to emulate, and she also considers that a mistake. Though that look is still rather popular today, I feel. The whole oversized jumper or t-shirt hanging off the shoulder type of look. I mean, I don't think I can get away. This hoodie's quite tight. So, okay, the neck hole for this hoodie is quite small, but look how big the hood is. Look how big the hood is. Am I crazy for thinking that this is a huge hood? Like, fair enough, it's my favourite band. I'm happy to wear as much to do with them as possible, but my goodness, there's a whole hand's worth on top of this hood. Right? Sorry, I just had to bring that up since we were talking about fashion. So yes, those were two of her biggest mistakes, though in all fairness, I still think Lorelai would rock those looks, so don't be too harsh on yourself. Maybe give them another go. So it's towards the end of the episode, and the Gilmore Girls are discussing Rory's future at Chilton. The offer is there maybe to leave if it gets too much for her, and this is what Rory says.
I'm not ready to give up on Chilton yet.
Fair enough.
I do, however, reserve the right to change my mind.
It's your prerogative as long as you remain a woman.
And so if we just condense and rearrange what was said here, it's tantamount to it's a woman's prerogative to change her mind, which may just seem like a common agreeable idea that, yeah, a woman can change her mind if she wants to. She's not beholden unto anyone. But actually, there is basis for this phrase in law. Because starting out in the Middle Ages, there was a breach of promise law, which basically meant that if a man agreed to marry a woman, they hadn't got married yet, there was just an engagement. If they are engaged but yet to marry, and then he breaks off the engagement, he can be sued for that. He can lose his money, he can lose his property. It's basically like going through a divorce. But then what about the opposite of that? What if the woman wanted to break off the engagement? Would she be liable for damages? Would she have to pay any restitutions? No, because it was basically written in law that a woman has a prerogative to change her mind if she so wishes. She may face social repercussions, but there are no lawful repercussions that she may encounter. The only contradiction to this would be if the woman accepted a dowry for the engagement, or if it could be proven without reasonable doubt that she had got engaged to the man in order to make use of his money. So if there was anything financial within the engagement and then she broke off the engagement, she would be in breach of the breach of promise law. So this was born of the idea that the man was the sole breadwinner and the only source of income into a household. And so getting engaged to a woman, she would see where the income revenue was coming from. And so if he broke off the engagement, it would leave this woman destitute. It would leave her alone, because back in the olden days, the woman would leave the household of her father in order to marry a man. And so she would sort of be left. And so to claim damages for the breaking of the engagement, or to claim, that type of thing. Anyway, that was 600 years ago. But funnily enough, it carried on for a long time, and it has been abolished in a lot of places, but only in recent years in some places. For example, in England, it wasn't abolished until the 70s, and in certain parts of Canada, it was still a law until 2010. And so this law that has been on the books for hundreds upon hundreds of years, with the clause that it is a woman's prerogative to change her mind, that definitely sticks out. And so that little phrase there has transcended its lawful beginnings and become common parlance. And now, yes, it is a woman's prerogative to change her mind, even if there's no lawful thing to back it up and anything behind that. No legislation for that, but yeah, do whatever you want. Change your mind. It's your prerogative. Much like it's the prerogative of this light to keep changing its mind whether it wants to work or not, because, it's going to be like a strobe show editing this, isn't it? I need to get a new one. And there we go, folks. That was every pop culture reference in Gilmore Girls Season 1, Episode 4, The Deer Hunters. Oh wait, no it wasn't, because there was a hidden one in the title. That's right, there's still one more explanation to go. So The Deer Hunter is a 1978 movie starring Robert De Niro, Meryl Streep, Christopher Walken. My God, it's an absolutely stacked cast. And it's about a group of Vietnam veterans who come back to rural America and try to readjust to civilian life, but they find it difficult because of all the trauma that they've gone through in the war. And normal living is just too difficult for them. They struggle, it's difficult, and, well, there are certain things. I mean, you can actually see on the poster right here, there's a lot going on in it. And so using this as a basis for the title of the episode is twofold, because one, there is a deer that runs into the car. Rory doesn't run into a deer, the deer runs into Rory. And so at the end, Rory and Lorelai are hunting for the deer. They're not actually hunting for the deer. They are looking for the deer to make sure that it's okay. And two, the way that the Vietnam veterans are trying to get used to civilian life and are struggling is kind of paralleled in the way that Rory is trying to get used to Chilton life. She is struggling. And it's that type of thing. She's been upended from a stressful situation that she excelled in and put into a different situation that she is now sort of floundering in. And that parallels the events of The Deer Hunter, because they work together as a unit in Vietnam, but now they're put into this other situation and the pressures are different and they just can't handle it. And so there we go, one hidden reference within the title. And you know what? Even though it's kind of outside of the episode, I'm counting it. And so allow me to repeat myself, folks, that is now every pop culture reference within Gilmore Girls Season 1, Episode 4, The Deer Hunters. And before we look at where this episode places in the ranking of pop culture references, I actually have an update to that tally. For you see, there was a reference that I overlooked in my video on Season 1, Episode 2, and I'm just going to show you the clip for context right here.
I don't have any clean clothes.
It's 7:15.
All my nice things were dirty.
It's 7:16.
Oh my God, I was gonna wear my blue suit with the flippy skirt. I look so great in the flippy skirt.
It's 7:17.
Okay, you know what, time lady? Why don't you go downstairs and warm up the car?
And I want to thank Christine Folano 2910 for bringing this to my attention. And I read out the comment that she left in the comment section because she explains the reference perfectly. In Lorelei's bedroom, she refers to Rory as the time lady, as Rory keeps telling her the time. That is a reference to when you could call a phone number and a woman would tell you the time. If you stayed on the line, she would keep counting up the time. 7 a.m., 7 a.m. and 30 seconds, on and on. And so yes, that is a legitimate pop culture reference that I happen to overlook. It just slipped through the net. So once again, thank you, Christine Folano 2910 for bringing that to my attention. And that is one added to the tally for Season 1, Episode 2. And so, with that in mind, these are the updated totals. Episode 2 now stands at 19 pop culture references explained, which is really handy because it breaks the tie between it and the first episode that were both on 18, but now there is a definitive ranking. Now let's take a look at Season 1, Episode 4, The Deer Hunters, which comes in at a total of 27 pop culture references explained. And so when we look at the rankings, episode 4 sits in at second place, only trailing by 2 behind episode 3, which leads at the moment with 29 references overall. And with the updated information, episode 2 is in third place and episode 1 is in fourth. It'll be interesting to see if anything can beat the 29 references. I kind of hope it doesn't, because these videos take so long to record. I mean, this one in particular has taken me nearly 5 hours to record. I am not looking forward to the day that an episode pops up and it's like 50 references. I may just have to take a week to actually do it. But enough with the pop culture references, let's take a look at a bit of trivia. Not a lot of trivia for this episode, I have to say. We do get the first appearance of Max Medina, played by Scott Cohen. And what is interesting is that Lauren Graham, who plays Lorelai, and Scott Cohen, who plays Max, previously appeared together on a 3-episode arc of Law & Order, episodes 715, 716, and 717. So they've already got history together. Of course, they're going to make more history here. And if you watched this episode and thought, there's something lacking here, it's because this is the first episode to not feature Emily and Richard Gilmore. And, well, I think we can all agree that Emily brings something to the mix that can't be replicated, but is certainly missed when it's not there. So as you can see, not a lot of trivia, but it just gives me more time to give my review on this episode. So the main storyline throughout this, the main moral of this, is how much the pressures of expectation can affect someone. Because the main plot is about Rory trying to deal with a less than expected grade that she received for her paper. She got a D, whereas before she was getting A's and A stars or A pluses, however you do it in America. But now she got a D and she feels like she's falling behind. And even the subplot of Suki feeling disheartened for getting not even a negative review. She was just told that her risotto was fine. That completely knocks her off balance. It just shows how much expectation can derail someone's mood, because both her and Rory are kind of going through the same thing. They think they've done something well, but then the observation of that is that it hasn't been as well as they thought it was, and then them trying to deal with it, however they go about it. But the one thing that is definitely witnessed is how much it affects them and how disheartened they are by it. And that is something that I brought up earlier when explaining one of the pop culture references, but about the pressures that are put on children in the education system. Because as I said before, and I'll just expand on a little bit further, I remember being a kid and going through all of the education system and being told that you have to do well in your year 6 SATs, otherwise you're not going to get into a good high school. And then being told you have to do well in your year 9 exams so that you can decide what GCSEs to take, otherwise you're not going to know what to do. And then being told the GCSEs are going to affect your life. You really need to nail them, otherwise your life will be ruined. And then being told A-levels will determine everything. Your entire trajectory trajectory for existence are hinging on these exams, and then being told the degree you get will set up the rest of your life. And if you do it wrong, if you fail, that's it, it's over. And you know what? None of it matters. None of it matters. I have known people who've been absolute top graders who are still unhappy in life. And I know people who didn't care about school, who were doing things they could never have imagined themselves doing. At the end of the day, and it is a real gripe I have, at the end of the day, there's a lot of institutionalized education system that is basically boiled down to just get enough kids to fit into these molds so that we can continue showing, hey, we've got good numbers. And the stress that puts on young people. You can see it here with Rory. She was a gifted child. Of course, she, went from Stars Hollow High into going to Chilton, and she's going to be challenged. Of course she's going to be challenged. She was starting late. She's behind the reading material. She knows that as well. She says towards the end of the episode, look, I'm just behind on the reading material. I just had to catch up. Of course, I wasn't going to know everything. But that's difficult for her. She thought she was well ahead getting that D, and Lorelai thought that as well. It's like, oh gosh, my baby, she feels that she has failed. And it's a lovely line, like, you can tell how much she loves her daughter. Of course she loves her daughter, but how well she knows her daughter, because there's that bit where she goes, oh gosh, she got a D. I have to go.
Oh, no. It's just that if Rory got a D, she's not feeling too good right now, and I'd really like to be there.
The very next scene is in Luke's diner, and Luke knows Rory as well. The entire town knows Rory. The entire town have raised Rory, and they know her. She's flung a pencil, and he brings over pie because she's everyone's daughter, and that's something that's really lovely. That's just a lovely moment. They all know her. They all want her to do well, and they all know her. And it's funny because a lot of teen media set in schools is usually about who's the most popular, It's usually about, oh, you can't hang out with us. You're not popular enough. Oh, you're not wearing the right clothes. You don't have the right accessories. Oh, you don't have a motorbike. All of that type of stuff. It's about who the cool kids are. But in this setup, it's about who's the most academically gifted. And you have that clique at the beginning of the episode run by Paris, who are just stomping on Rory for not being intellectually gifted enough. Like, they're ripping it out of her because she got a D, which is, one, kind of funny because it's a subversion of what you usually see in things that take place within a school. But two, it really solidifies this expectation of, I've got to do well. It's not about changing my personality. It's not about, maybe if I just act a bit cooler, or maybe if I just accept myself for being myself and they will find me cool. It's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with popularity. It's about, I actually need to do more work. I actually need to catch up with this. And the pressures, like, a kid's mind is a sponge taking in the world, but sometimes things don't work. Not every kid has a square hole to have a square peg put in it. Like, we're different shapes, we're different, we're built differently, we absorb information differently, we visualize the world differently, and yet it's all about numbers and it's all about getting them out. And so certain kids struggle to pick up on certain things. They don't absorb the information the same way that other kids do. And so when you're comparing yourself going, but they've done so well. Yeah, it's probably because they've absorbed it differently than you. They're just built differently. It doesn't mean they're better. It just means they're different. But of course, when things are graded, when things are done by letters and numbers and an actual hierarchical system, it doesn't matter. You just see, I'm there compared to them, therefore I am failure, therefore I am terrible, therefore my entire life is ruined. And that is the biggest thing about this episode when it comes to Rory and when it comes to Suki. The perceived failings you have by not matching the expectations that you've kind of put on yourself. I mean, like, there are people out there who would get a D in Chilton and go, oh my gosh, I got a D. Look how clever I am in this amazing school with such great minds and great teachers. And I got a D. I didn't fail, but I got a D. And Suki being written up for a review and being, oh my gosh, they said it was fine. Look at all the rest of the good stuff that was said. And they said it was fine. Hey, they didn't say it was terrible. I'm so grateful for that. But the expectations you put on yourself, you being your own worst enemy, it's a really good example of that. And it breaks my heart because I recognize that. And as you can see from this diatribe that I've had about the education system, about the stress that I've put on kids, I mean, so many lives have been ruined out of arbitrary stress about making sure you get the right grades and the right... Oh, it's just so frustrating because we should just be learning what we want to learn in ways that we want to learn them. And every individual should be nurtured in the way that they are individually meant to be nurtured. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Unfortunately, there's not enough time or enough money to do that. And so instead, it's put on the individual that, hey, if you aren't matching the hoops that we have put out for you, then you are a failure. Rather than, hey, we're kind of failing you by not providing the hoops that you need and the hoops that you want to jump through. But anyway, it's a good episode. It really highlights the stress this new environment that Rory is under. Of course, I've watched further in, so I know the trajectory of how things go, but it's interesting to see these little seeds being sown in order to go, these are the decisions that are made later down the line in regards to education, in regards to Rory's standing within the school as well. And we've also got the first introduction of Max, and not going to spoil it, we'll just do this episode by episode, but let's see if he makes any further appearances down the line, shall we? And before I finish, can I just say, I love the concept of Stars Hollow. Like, it is this tiny town, isn't it? It is tiny. You've got the diner there, you've got Pancake House on the other side of, just little things. But there is a fully stocked stationery store. Like, of course there is. Of course there is. There's everything you could ever want. I don't know how it all fits in. I don't know how there is the space for all things, but anything you want, don't you worry, there's a store for it. It's great. I would love to live there. I think that's the dream, isn't it? Just a little walkable community where you know everyone and everything you want is available, but not in sort of like a mega store type of way. Just individual independent stores that cater to your needs. Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful? Well. And there we go, folks. That is the end of the video. I have rabbited on for far too long. My light needs to take a break. I'm just going to let you know, in between one of these segments, I actually went on Amazon and ordered a new light. I was sick of it. I was sick of seeing this in the back of my vision just flashing on and off. So I've ordered a new light. It's coming tomorrow. Let's see for the next video if it actually works and we have some consistency. My apologies for it being, oh gosh, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, but never mind. I'm going to end the video here. If you enjoy this video, feel free to give it a like. And don't forget, in the comment section down below, let me know of any pop culture references that you did already know, but any that you didn't know. And you've gone, oh, that's what that means. Now I feel like Rory, who is in school because I've learned something new, but I'm not going to get stressed over it because... what's the point? And if you want to make sure you don't miss out on any future videos, then don't forget to subscribe because you'll be notified when any new videos pop up. And also it helps me as well because I'm like, oh, look how many people actually want me to make these videos. That's good to know. I've got the motivation to spend another 6 hours doing this. Let's get on with it. But yes, my friends, I'm going to have a little relax now. I need to get rid of the rest of this cold. I need to get rid of this light. Let that have a little bit of a sleep as well. And I'm just going to end the video there. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. Luck and more to you all. And catch you next time.